The first choice for this project group is called face melt. You're essentially just going to take 5 portraits that you've taken with your digital camera. You can use them from previous photos, or you could take some new photos. That's usually best. And you're gonna warp those faces or melt them into something new. The tools you just learned how to use, the restoration tools, in addition to some basic selection tools and some other filters and processes, will help you warp the face digitally. And there's just tons and tons of stuff online about how to digitally manipulate faces in Photoshop. If you do a quick Google search, you'll find tons of stuff from how to add makeup to how to make a person look like a zombie. In the project folder, I've collected some of these links, but there's always more to find. You have to make sure you use a human subject, and you have to make some kind of alteration to that human subject. I am going to try to show you some examples here of professional work, but you know, you don't have to get this polished, but you should at least try to attempt some of this stuff. Alright, I'm not going to talk about every single one of these examples here, but briefly, this first series here, this artist was very successful with this series. He took photos of his friends and then sort of kind of made them look more childish in Photoshop. Now, the reason this series is really successful is because he kind of kept the setting and the lighting very consistent for each photo. So if you want this project to be successful and you don't have any good photos with staged lighting, or you have an idea but you don't really know how to execute it, chances are you're probably going to have to retake some portrait photos to work with. I highly recommend this. It doesn't take a lot of time on your part, and it'll ensure that the second half of the project, where you're in Photoshop and manipulating them, is a bit easier. So take a look at some of these examples. Towards the end of this series of examples here, there are photographs that are staged photographs. They're not photoshopped, but I thought I'd include them just to give you some inspiration as to what you could potentially do with your photos, and yeah, just soak in some of these examples. Just going to run you through some quick things you might want to try for your face melt. A lot of this project you're going to have to do on your own, though, so you're going to have to do your own research and sort of kind of look into all the other facets of Photoshop. First thing I'm going to show you how to use is the Liquefy filter. This is an awful lot of fun to use. Go to Filter, Liquefy. And this special window will open up. It should consume all of your space here. I don't know why mine's not, but essentially what you're going to do is just play around and liquefy your image. You have a bunch of tools over here that do all sorts of weird stuff. I am not going to get too in-depth as to what this does, but again, it's got tons of options and it's super advanced. This tool is used for very, very subtle adjustments or very, very drastic ones. You can use it however you want, but I suggest you do quite a bit of research before you start messing around with it. Or you could just be me and play with it. Liquefy just sort of liquefies things. So you can kind of take parts of your flesh and sort of cook and drag them around. So like if I want a bigger ear, I can take my ear and bring it out. Make it look weird. Kind of, yeah. I don't know what I'm doing, but if you use it right, you can use it to kind of really pull the ear out and not have it look so weird. You can mask off sections. Lots of features to this that I'm not going to really go into. Okay, so we use the Liquefy. One other thing you can do is you can use your stamp tool to create ends. The stamp tool is super awesome. Again, to use the stamp tool, you just sample an area and you paint that area out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck the align box here so that I can just sample my mustache. And I'm just going to paint that out, kind of like I want to extend my mustache. So if I sample here, you're going to hold down the Alt key and click, and then I'll just keep painting that out to the ends of the earth or wherever I feel comfortable painting that. And take this, paint that out as well. Okay, make my face look silly. All right. You can do that kind of with anything. Like if I want to take my eye, I could paint my eye up here. It's really weird, but again, you're melting the face and you're sort of playing around with it, so you don't have to be super realistic. Hopefully you do a better job than I'm doing right now. Another thing you can do is just making selections and then copying those selections. Again, if you don't know how to make selections, the selection tools are up here. Check out kind of all the resources I have available to you, or look at some tutorials online as to how to make good selections. Real quick, I'm just going to use a lasso selection here to, let's just zoom in, select my mouth, okay, and then we'll just copy that a bunch of times or something like that. Okay, to copy selection, just hit Control C, Control V, and that'll copy it to a new layer. And you can copy that layer as much as you want. You can kind of, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Maybe add more teeth. Who knows? But you can use that to add extra body parts. You can use it to move around parts or extend parts. Like if I wanted to extend my hair, I could have made a selection of my hair and copied that a bunch of times up here. Real simple stuff. One other thing you might want to use to kind of warp your face. I'm going to turn off these layers and use this individual selection I have of my head here. Turn on this background here. One thing you might want to try is a puppet warp. Puppet warp allows you to kind of warp things upon individual points within your image. So I do need an object that's isolated from its background. So I've kind of made a selection of just my head here, and we're working on that layer. Okay. To do a puppet warp, go Edit, Puppet Warp. Now we're going to see this random grid kind of pop up, and this is how the puppet warp works. You set pins, and then you move it along those pins. So click to make a pin, click to make a pin, and then you can move based on those pins. Okay, I haven't pinned enough things. Let's pin my shoulders in place. Okay. Alright, and then I'm going to move my head. So it should pivot along this section here, and my shoulders should stay in place. There we go. That's nice and weird. So, depending on where you set the pins is how it behaves. You know, like if I wanted to rotate my ear here, you know, I could take that and warp it out there. Really powerful tool, really cool. When you're done warping it, just commit to that warp. I'm not going to commit to this warp because I'm going to show you one more warp thing you can try. Okay, one last warp thing you can try is the free transform, or the transform warps. So under Edit, Transform, you can try the perspective warp. I highly recommend you do. It's got some really cool features, but I'm going to show you transform warp. Okay, so if I click on that, it'll pop up a custom warp envelope here, and I can take individual points within this envelope and I can use that to warp parts of my head here. I can also use one of the presets. The presets like bulge or arch. Okay. But I'm just going to use custom here. Or I don't know how to go back in time, but anyway, makes no difference. To to edit a warp, you just sort of play around with these anchor points here on the edge of the warp. And it's not letting me do that. Huh, weird. Well, that's the last thing I was going to show you. Play around with all these things, obviously, and then make sure you look up some tutorials, because chances are people have figured out 1,000 way more efficient, way more creative ways to sort of play around with pixels in Photoshop than you have. So kind of rely on their hard work and sort of use it differently to make something new and creative.